Hello, Latvia. We're very happy to announce the Latvian translation of The Great COVID Panic, What Happened, Why, and What to Do Next. I'm Gigi Foster. I'm a professor at the University of New South Wales in Sydney, Australia, and I'm joined in this brief introductory video by my great friend and co-author of The Great COVID Panic, Professor Paul Fraiterss, who is a professor at Mohammed bin Salman College and also at the London School of Economics. Hey, Paul.
Hi, Gigi. Yes, to all Latvian viewers, great to talk to you. I fondly remember my time in Riga a few years ago.
So we're just going to answer a few questions that some of you may be wondering about in a kind of interactive format. So Paul, let me ask you, what would you add or remove from this book if you were writing and publishing it now in early 2022?
I'd certainly, of course, write about the updated medical knowledge that we now have, you know, how the vaccines have proven to be far less effective than hoped for, and also with far worse side effects than was originally imagined, certainly by the developers. And maybe I would sort of have said that the illusion of control phase has sort of lasted a bit longer in most countries than just as it were to the end of 2020. Maybe I would sort of push that forward. But apart from that, it's usually not all that much, really. It sort of has gone according to script very, very closely. And to ask you a certain question, you know, how has this book done in various parts of the world? What has the reception been?
Well, here in Australia, I have to say it's been very positive, Paul. I've been on really more podcasts and interviews about the book, including some in-person interviews as well, than I can count over the last year or so. And many of them in the last 6 months have featured the book and, of course, the arguments therein. I think it's kind of penetrated to the extent possible within the resistance here in Australia. Outside of this country, it's done okay in the US and the UK, but I think one of the issues holding it back is that our English edition publisher, Brownstone Institute, is basically a one-man show. We love Jeffrey Tucker, but he is only one person, and so there's not a big marketing department behind this this initiative. So obviously, you know, word of mouth is a great way to try to promote the ideas in the book and to promote some thinking outside the box about what's happened during COVID. So let me ask you another question, Paul. Is the awareness of the mass panic growing in the world, in your view, or is the easing of restrictions sort of part of a similar fashionable thing to do, just without any real better understanding of what's actually happened?
I think that among the major bureaucracies of Western countries, awareness of the panic is growing because, of course, they have to push back on the restrictions, but they also have to learn the lessons of the mistakes that were made and whether or not they're going to do this again, you know, with every new disease. And so there you see, as it were, a consolidation of the old wisdom before 2020. You see that very clearly in the UK, whereby it's now openly acknowledged within the state bureaucracy that mistakes have been made and that really they shouldn't have had any of these restrictions and that they should go back to a rational view of public health policy. You also see that in some other European and particularly in the US countries, right, where also there is a big intellectual pushback within the state bureaucracy. But I think it's fair to say that for the majority of the world population, academics, politicians, and state bureaucracies in their propaganda are pretending that everything was done according to plan, that they made no mistakes, and that they merely seen the light in terms of changed scientific developments and new insights, and hence they're now changing the policies. But there's no recognition of mistakes or, of course, of the huge damage that's been done. They by and large tend to look for new excuses for the damage, such as, for instance, that the increased food prices of 30%, which has happened already last year, is now suddenly due to the Ukraine crisis. So, as it were, sticking your head in the sand as to the huge damage that was inflicted by themselves is happening in most of the world, which is, of course, a pity. But yes, there is an increased awareness amongst the intelligentsia, who's by and large trying to look away. But in the state bureaucracies in particular, lessons are starting to be learned because, of course, that is where future events will have to be prepared. Now, Gigi, my final question for you, and this is because of what we know about Latvian readers. They seem to be very interested in Australia. How's the situation really been sort of developing there? What's the situation look like there?
Well, I have to say, it's been a period during which I've learned a lot about Australians. Even though I've been living here since 2003, I didn't realize really some of the core parts of the culture until this period, particularly the desire to conform, the desire to comply, the desire to follow orders. That's come out extremely strongly. And we've had some of the most draconian restrictions, not just because the politicians were pushing them through due to their own beliefs about what would get them more power or more money, but people were really clamoring for them. They wanted to be locked down harder. They wanted to have more and more restrictions on their freedoms. And that's been very scary for me, very, very alarming. And as you probably know, Paul, still here in Australia, there are major barriers to travel, particularly for people who haven't gotten the COVID injections. And so a lot of people haven't been back to their homelands because, of course, Australia is a nation of immigrants largely. So there's a lot of people here who have family and friends overseas, including myself. And there just hasn't been that regular travel that used to be a normal part of life for an Australian. So that's been very alarming to see. I think exactly as you say, the politicians here who are starting to wake up to what may have happened, what may have been a bad look for them, if people were to really investigate hard, in terms of what happened in this period, they are starting to distract away to other things as quickly as possible. So either they are pointing to Ukraine, or they're pointing to the floods that we've just recently had here in Sydney and Brisbane, or other kinds of disasters or news events, and trying to get people to look the other way and say, there's nothing to see here, so that they will perhaps avoid some of the justice that I think otherwise would be coming to them. It's just a question of time, though, really, how long it will take for the world to desire to really look at this and hold some of the people who made the decisions in this horrible period in human history to account. And I do hope for that. And of course, we speak about that in our book in terms of what to do next and what we're hoping for the future. It's been great to talk with Latvian readers. Thank you very much for your support, and we hope that you greatly enjoy this book.
Indeed. And best of luck in Latvia in these difficult times.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.